It's hard to believe it's been 50 years since you opened the door, paved the way to the visit of China by Richard Nixon. The world hasn't been the same since. Could you have ever envisioned, Doctor, that the China then would be the China that it is now?
Well, it wasn't conceivable then that China could become an economic or technological competitor with the United States. It was then a fairly developing country with a revolutionary ideology, but not a competitor in a technical sense.
Did you have any sense then, Secretary, when you and Richard Nixon were planning this trip? We heard a lot about how it was supposed to triangulate, let's say, the then Soviet Union, a bigger threat, or so it appeared. Now, today,
when we were
experts say
planning
China
the
is the bigger threat.
But when we were planning the trip, there was a Vietnam War going on, and
Right.
Russia was the dominant threat. And as you said, we tried to triangulate the relationship. Today, China has become economically second to us, and some people think that in some respects or in some fields it may surpass us technologically. I don't think it has done so yet, and one has to understand the significance of what it means to be surpassed. But that is the challenge today.
You know, Secretary, China's been very provocative of late with not only, invading and Taiwan airspace, but very threatening moves as well. A lot of people are very surprised by the hard line it's taken with Taiwan, even in the face of U.S. threats. Are you worried about what's going on?
Well, the evolution of the Taiwan issue has been complicated, and it was, at one time, it was the basic issue, and then we thought we had it on a basis of autonomy for Taiwan, and a series of agreements that were made. And it's now becoming more acute again. But I think part of it is also the fault of our diplomacy in being so insistent on raising issues which we thought had been, at least for a while, kept non-apparent.
So when you say some issues, what are you talking about?
Well, I think there's a sort of a tacit understanding between China and the United States in the Nixon-Mao period, which was that China would not insist on the one China solution, and we would not talk about a two-China solution, so that a large sphere of autonomy for China could develop, as it has over the last 50 years, when China has become, Taiwan has become an essentially democratic state with a substantial economy and a large, almost, I would say, complete autonomy in its internal and foreign affairs. So the question will be whether we can come up on both sides with a solution that gives us another long period of tranquility within which other things can change.
A lot of people say it's inevitable, the hostile relations between our countries now, that something could go wrong, that we could come to blows, that we could go to war. Do you fear that?
I don't believe that marriage will lead to a confrontation, to a military confrontation. If it does, it would be extremely serious for the whole world if China and the United States, with the technology that they have by now achieved, confront each other in a showdown. And I still hope that a diplomatic solution for these outstanding problems can be found. And I have the impression that the administration is beginning a kind of dialogue with China, which might lead to that result.
We can only hope. You know, Dr. Kissinger, in your book, this is a good chance to get into this issue of artificial intelligence in the age of AI and our human future. And I was thinking of China and how much it has taken artificial intelligence to the next level, and that extends to some of its weaponry and its military capabilities that are apparently far, far more sophisticated than we thought. So I guess what I'm asking after your book here, do you think that this future of artificial intelligence, which scares people beyond just, you know, a machine that can beat a chess master at his own game, to even befriend human beings in the pursuit of everyday tasks, that China has a significant edge here, does it?
I think we are, in a way, in an arms race with respect to artificial intelligence, because it is a technology which is developing. It is imprecise in some respects. It is emerging, and it learns from its own activities. So we have never been in a situation in which objects could develop their own, not only identity, but develop their own objectives, and in which they might differ from our perception, and how to bring this into relationship with each other within our own planning. It's already a big challenge. And then to bring it into some relationship with a major power like China is another one. And right now there is almost no dialogue going on in which anything is discussed of this consequence. And this particular field of artificial intelligence will wind up transforming not just international relations with one country, but the nature of international relations, and also the nature of our societies, and in a way of our human perception of reality as we see it. We are at the very beginning of this, so it is not yet fully evident, but it's something very similar to the transformation that occurred in the world with in the Enlightenment period, when suddenly we moved from a perception of religion as a basis to the giving a role, and an increasing and in the end dominant role, to reason. And we have that sort of evolution ahead of us.
You know what's scary, though? A lot of people look at machines who've been replacing humans over these many, many decades, whether on automobile assembly shops, factory floors, and the like, Doctor. But
no,
you
but
point out
machines
in the book
have
about...
been replaced.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But machines have been replacing humans as instruments of labor and of productivity. Machines have not been given, or we have not been able to give them, an autonomous capability so that they can develop their own concepts, and also that they can accumulate knowledge with a speed and execute it with a speed that is far superior to what the human being can do.
But we're getting
And
close,
so-
aren't we, sir? I mean, when you talk about AI-powered jets that are defeating experienced human pilots in simulated dogfights, that's
Well, we
a
are
step above what we got
in-
used to, right?
Well, the chess example is a very good example. They tried to see whether computers could learn chess, and they gave the rules of this, and then permitted that computer to play, one computer being white, the other being black, and they came up with an entirely new concept of chess that no human being had practiced, even among the greatest chess masters. So there are a number of examples in this book that describe the novelty and to some extent the autonomy of the artificial intelligence process. And on the other hand, we have to construct our societies as they're being based more or less on artificial intelligence in a way that human beings can keep control of these activities. And that over the decades ahead will become a major concern of societies, and of course our society, which has developed this to a probably as yet dominant but not permanently dominant position, so that China is either catching up or in some categories even ahead. So that is a new experience for America and for the world.
Yeah, I think when you were talking to the Grandmaster Garry Kasparov, who was startled that a machine was beating him every move simply because the machine was doing things that human had never conceived. And I'm wondering, in a larger extent, Doctor, if that's the kind of thing we should worry about, that this is happening so fast that it could enable a cunning country, or not even a country, a terrorist, to take this to the next level.
Well, I'm not a technologist, and I got involved in this because I was listening to a lecture that was raising some of these issues, and it occurred to me that as somebody who has had experience in the conduct of strategy and of study of history, that these fields need to be related before the technology becomes totally autonomous, because it's not the same as using a machine historically. It is making an object or a machine your partner, and it becomes a partner by being given a parallel, the same objective. But you will always face the problem that interpreting this objective, the machine may come to a different conclusion, and then it has to be harmonized with what it was intended to do, and we have to learn how to do that, and we have even equally to learn how to become aware of it. And what we try to do in this book is to say, here are a set of problems. We know they're going to happen. We don't know exactly how they're going to happen. And we have to deal with them. on both a national and international basis, while they're still in a formative stage, and while we can be conscious of the tremendous opportunities they represent, but also the grave dangers they represent.
Do you think, Secretary, that Joe Biden is up to that challenge as president?
Well, no president is up to that challenge from his own knowledge today. And I think the president is certainly capable of assembling a group of leaders in various fields who can tell him the implications in their fields and then make a judgment. But it requires a kind of nonpartisan perception that we are dealing with a future that is inevitable. This is not just a hot idea of some scientists who've developed new technologies. So many aspects, the collection of data, the fields of biology, of medicine, it will have fundamental implications. And what we are doing in this book is to raise these issues, and we are suggesting that whoever is president will create a structure that enables him to understand what the choices are, and that the technologists who are working on these fantastic machines and possibilities, that they are aware that they have historic implications for mankind, and think not only about the technological possibilities, but the impact on human life and the impact on foreign policy and on domestic policy. That's not being done now systematically. It's not being done at all in this way. And that's not the fault of President Biden. That's what he inherited, and it wasn't possible before, because it's an amazing phenomenon. It's happened in the last 10 years that its full significance, or its partial significance, has become apparent.
It is remarkable, and to your point, I mean, it presents two stark futures for the world, one that's promising and enlightening and something that can bring people together, and one that's terrifying and can destroy everything we hold dear. It's a fascinating book. It's great to catch up with you. You look great. You obviously is
good to see you again,
on top
Neil.
of things as always. Stay that way, Dr. Kissinger. We need you.
Thank you.